So in this video, we're going to talk about Dario Fo's play One Was Nude and One Wore Tails, which I think is a fantastic title for a play. The basic gist of this play, it's a comedy. The basic gist of it is the idea that the clothes make the man. But what's fun about this play is it's not as simple as that. So we start out with these two street sweepers. One of them is a bit dull. One of them is clever and philosophical. So the first one, the second street sweeper starts making these sort of philosophical points, and the first sweeper is basically like, shut up, I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of hearing your stupid philosophy every night. But then we get this great Socratic moment, right? This moment where the second sweeper poses a pointed question that he wants the first sweeper to answer. And that question is, what's the most important thing in life? Answer me that. And the first sweeper says, well, I should say that it's that a person should have good health and happiness. The second sweeper says, that way he can reach true happiness? The first sweeper says, yes. And then if he doesn't give a damn for anything or anyone, that's even better. The second sweeper says, there you go. Well done. I have to admit that I was mistaken about you. You're really not as stupid as you look. That's exactly correct. In order to be truly happy, one must raise oneself above life's wretched vicissitudes, forget one's own ambitions, suppress one's feelings and passions. And they go on like this for a little while. And basically the idea that the second sweeper suggests... sorry, I'm filming outside. And I'm hearing noises from over there. There's a plastic bag blowing around. But anyway, so what the second sweeper essentially argues is that what you need to do in order to suppress your identity, in order to reform your identity to achieve true happiness, is to sort of empty yourself, empty your identity. That is, your identity rooted in your actual subjectivity, who you actually are, in order to remake yourself. And he puts this idea out. He says, what can be more suitable than a road sweeper's life in order to suppress within us that baggage of arrogance, pride, and ambition which prevents us from stripping ourselves of pointless vanities and going forward naked but happy to attain the bliss and ecstasy of the platonic world of ideas? The first sweeper says, naked. There, I knew it. Now I'm starting to get heady. What do you mean, naked? The second sweeper says, naked? Naked outside, but clothed within, in our spirit clothed. First sweeper says, our spirit clothed. Hey, I like that. I'll have to remember that. But what does it mean? Second sweeper says, I'll explain it in a couple of words. You, for example, do you see yourself as someone? The first sweeper says, what a question. I'm a road sweeper. What do you expect me to see myself as? The second sweeper says, precisely. You don't see yourself as anyone. You see yourself as nobody. In short, a nothingness. But is not nothingness perhaps the beginning of everything? In other words, the absolute. And the absolute, as Plato says, is God, and therefore you are God. So this is the idea. You strip away your identity. You strip away any semblance of a sense of self in order to be everything. And it's possible that everything potentially means anything as well, because a little while later the second sweeper says, look, a person could dress you up as absolutely anything. A king, a clown, a soldier, a priest, stark naked, or in evening dress, you will always be yourself, a road sweeper. In fact, not even a road sweeper, a nobody, because you are nobody and therefore everything. So this is an interesting point. This is the idea, right, that the clothes... This is actually a rejection of the idea, right, that the clothes make the man. That it doesn't matter what you're dressed as, a king, a priest, an ambassador, whatever it is. We'll come back to ambassador. Because you are fundamentally nothing. Your identity is nil in some way. And that gives you this complete, absolute freedom. Now, what's interesting is that shortly after this, a woman shows up. She's a prostitute, implicitly, although she comes back later and it's sort of not as clear if she's a prostitute, but probably she is. She's a prostitute, we think. She is being followed by the Vice Squad, and so the second sweeper agrees to put on evening dress that he just happens to have with him, and to go with her and pretend to be her fiancé, so that the police won't arrest her. So he's literally, despite having said, you could be dressed as any of these things and it wouldn't change what you fundamentally are, he dresses in evening clothes and becomes a respectable gentleman. He is literally transformed by the clothes. Then, the first sweeper goes off a little bit. He comes back. He goes off actually to take the second sweeper's bin back to the depot. He comes back to get his own, finds that it's been moved. And when he locates his bin, there's a naked man inside. And basically this naked man explains that he had been having an affair with a woman who wasn't his wife. He heard her husband returning, and so rather than trying to pull his clothes on, he fled from the apartment or house or whatever it was, and he took shelter in this bin, totally naked, in order to try and save both his and the woman's reputation, etc., etc. And if the street sweeper will take him home, he will pay the man a lot of money. He also gives him a gold watch, etc., etc., trying basically to get the sweeper to take this guy home. The naked man, is an ambassador. He's been at an official function where he hooked up with this woman. And so there is this sort of back and forth, this conflict about this, and about how the naked man would even get into his home, because he's naked, and even if the street sweeper takes him up to his door, he would then still have to ring his doorbell naked, which might raise some questions from his wife about why he's no longer wearing the evening out in. But shortly after that, a flower seller on a bicycle comes along, and this guy is dressed in evening wear. I guess you go to like nightclubs and things like that and sell flowers, and so you have to be dressed appropriately. This is nightclubs back in the day, like fancy nightclubs, not like techno music and ecstasy and whatnot. So they managed to buy from this flower seller his evening wear in exchange for the street sweeper's clothes, the gold watch, and all of the money that the street sweeper has, which the naked man, the naked ambassador, promises he will pay back when they get to his house. The street sweeper, because he has now given up his clothes so that the flower seller won't be naked, the street sweeper puts on the evening wear, at which point the woman comes back and mistakes him for an ambassador and a duke. The street sweeper is not super concerned with disabusing her of these notions. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because what we start to see is that the clothes do make the man. Not necessarily in the sense that the person wearing the clothes is themselves transformed, because toward the end of the play, the sweeper does reiterate the point from the beginning about his not being somebody. The woman says, "What a pleasure it is listening to you talk. It must be good to feel that you're somebody." And the sweeper says, To tell you the truth, I don't really see myself as anybody at all. A nobody, in fact. In short, a nothingness. But since nothingness is... And he sits down on the bench dismayed. There, now I've forgotten what nothingness is. But never mind. Anyway, just to give you an example, if I dress up as a priest or a jester or as a general or in evening dress, it's as if I was naked. In other words, a road sweeper. You see? So he mangles the philosophy of the first sweeper. Sorry, that's pollen that's flying all over the place. So he mangles the philosophy of the second sweeper, but the core element is still there. He's dressed in evening clothes, and on the one hand, he's still a road sweeper because he still thinks of himself as a road sweeper. Whatever other components of his identity are, involved, he fundamentally sees himself as a road sweeper, and he sees road sweepers as nothing, and therefore he is nothing, but nothing is everything. On the other hand, he is, in effect, an ambassador and a duke, because this woman has taken him to be one. And this is the twist on the clothes make the man idea, is that for the sweeper himself, he has not fundamentally changed. But in a phenomenological way, that is, in the way that people perceive something to be reality and therefore treat it as such, he has changed. Because he's wearing evening dress, because this woman believes him to be an ambassador and a duke and somebody, in the play's terms, he is those things for her. So this is the interesting tension of the play, is what it means to oneself to have an identity is not necessarily what it means for someone who perceives that person. The sweeper thinks of himself as nobody, she thinks of him as somebody, and it has to do largely with clothes.